Thank you, everyone. So this is actually my first time meeting face-to-face StaffPlus audience, because all the events that I've done with Tanya, or even the StaffPlus webinars that we continue to do, they're all online. And I'm just so excited to see you and be able to just kind of interact with you. My talk today is on time management, and you might be wondering what this is. This is my time management for this talk. So I'm just going to come clean here. I have the timings here of my sections. I will aim to keep to time. But before we do that, I'm going to kind of rewind back to when I was a senior engineer, okay? And this is kind of what I thought of staff engineers that I saw working in my team and working in other teams. I thought they had these superpowers, and why did I think that? Well, I saw that they could be everything, everywhere, all at once. They could be coding, doing this deep work, very focused. They could be in meetings when they needed to be and provide the context and kind of facilitate those discussions. They could jump into all this kind of whiteboarding that we had to do to discuss decisions or features or architectural changes. And at that time, me being a senior engineer, I didn't really have to do much time management, okay? I was embedded in a team, okay? I was mostly picking up stories that the team had refined together. We had this set of kind of agile ceremonies, so there were a few meetings in my week, but I didn't really have to manage any of those, okay? I could literally just lose myself in kind of the work, okay, collaborating with my direct team, okay? That was kind of very seamless because we were kind of in sync. And then I became a principal engineer. And that promotion was really, really hard for me. Okay, the change was much bigger than I thought, okay? But I was very, very lucky that I had a manager who knew exactly what to do, and she coached me through this change. The main questions that I had back then was, what are the things that I need to be focusing on? And how do I make decisions about prioritizing? Because work is just infinite. So hi, I am Blanca. I'm Spanish and I'm British, so maybe the translator comes from that, okay? Right now, I have my own data consulting business. I'm a former principal engineer, like Tanya said. I spent 7 years at the BBC, then I've worked with like a series of small companies, startups, and I've mostly focused on building data platforms these days. So why do I love this topic? Well, I like it because it was something that it was very hard for me. And then I learned, like Tanya said, that all of the struggles that you have as a principal engineer, you see that other engineers are going through them. And it also ties with another topic that I really care about, which is burnout and taking care of ourselves. So I'm hoping that by me sharing what I learned with you, it will help you prevent that burnout. But also as influencers, like James just said, it will also help prevent burnout in the teams and influence everyone around you. So now we're going to frame this, time management into this year that we're all living through, and it's really, really hard. Companies are going through layoffs, drives of changes, and overall just kind of seeking that operational efficiency. So there was an article published in the Lead Dev blog that really kind of resonated with me because it kind of highlighted and summarized what are the priorities that overall companies, tech companies are kind of going through, and how those end up lining up with what the teams or engineering teams need, okay? And I kind of looked at those, all of those bullet points there, and I thought, well, from a StaffPlus position, I see at least 3 of them that we can directly influence, okay? By managing our time, we're becoming more efficient, okay? And we can scale that to the teams that we're working with. We have one foot, okay, with kind of the deep code and understanding all the engineering effort, but we also have the other foot with the business, so we can help quantifying the value of that work, okay, and kind of translate one way and the other, okay, so that the organization understands more what the effort is needed in our teams, but also teams can understand better how the work they're doing impacts the overall business context. And then the last is gaining clarity in what the priorities are. Okay, this is very key, because sometimes when you are engaged with like that business context, it's kind of this cloud of things and all this kind of jargon that you're thinking, oh gosh, this is like another language that I need to learn here. So by you spending time in your role, understanding that, you can also help your teams gain more clarity on it. So think about those kind of discrete skills and how you're doing them in your role, in your day-to-day. So going again in that efficiency effort, I've heard a lot the phrase this year of, we have to do more with less. And I strongly disagree with that. I think we just have to be more intentional with the work that we're taking on, and also enable other people to do the same. So I'm advocating for prioritizing and for clarifying things, okay? And spending the time focused on those things and not trying to do everything all, because we're just gonna get burned out. So today's talk, we're gonna be going through the following items: the intro, which I've just done. Then the first part of time management is understanding what is your role, okay? And what are the expectations that other people have on you. Next, we're going to be moving on what are the strategies that you can develop for actually knowing what to focus on. Then we're going to be talking more about your personal skills, okay, and how do you do your best work. And then last, we're going to just summarize everything and wrap up. So first, it's about understanding the role, okay? Job specs, if you've realized by now, they just don't tell us the whole story. One thing is what you read, another thing is when you step especially into a technical leadership role. So going back to me, when I was a senior engineer, I was looking at the staff engineers and I had the impression that they did more things and faster and better than me, okay? So for me, the role sounded a bit similar, okay? But the key difference is how they go about in achieving those similar outcomes, okay? And last year, there was a series of StaffPlus webinars that we did, exploring the roles of principal, staff, distinguished engineer across different organizations. And what I took from that was there's incredible, not just within the same organization, the shape of the StaffPlus roles, but also across different companies. The roles usually don't map out, okay? The career ladders are slightly different. So maybe watching those, if you are feeling a bit lonely, can help you see that, hey, it's not me. Actually, everyone is just trying to figure this out. But then what do you need to move from one role to the next, okay? If you do more of the same, you're going to get really good at those things. So if you spend most of your day, let's say, coding and doing that deep work, you're going to become amazing, okay? You're going to be an expert, but maybe you will not grow any further. So promotion is about, hey, you're still going to be technical, but there's also going to be other things that you need to influence. So I was working within one team, and moving to principal engineer, I had to influence multiple teams. So some of that time that involved meetings, that involve discussions, that involve documenting, like James said, okay, to kind of influence opinions and scale that influence, or kind of taking part in longer term planning. So think about those small things and how your time is being spent. And then once you spend time that understanding what that new role is, you're going to realize that there's been a shift in your mindset. Your awareness has broadened. There's more things that you do in your day-to-day role. So this leap is quite big for kind of that first step into technical leadership. But think that as you progress to that kind of technical leadership ladder, you're going to be using more and more of these skills, okay? You're going to be wanting to amplify your impact and your influence. So you're going to be honing on this. You're still going to be hands-on coding at some points, but most of the time might be spending, okay, with other people. And now we're going to think, well, I've understood my role, but what do others need of me? Okay, Nayana hinted that you might be joining an organization and all of a sudden people want you to do all of those things. And it's good to spend time understanding what do people expect of you. So my original story, when my manager started coaching me through the change, she didn't focus on telling me this is what you need to be doing. She just said, why don't you write a list of all the things that you're involved with, okay? Just write it out. And let's have a discussion. And I came up with a really long list of things, okay? I had all the things that I was doing, all my hopes and dreams written in that list, because I was just trying to be everything everywhere all at once. And we had a discussion and we started kind of prioritizing and identifying what were, for example, growth opportunities, what things I had been doing for a while. Perhaps there were some of those kind of sand and pebbles that Nayana said you can maybe delegate to others, okay? And then we thought, well, we kind of aligned, okay, the two of us, but this has to be kind of acknowledged more widely. Is this okay with what people think, what the role is that I'm here for? So we kind of did some rounds of feedback with people, and we kind of refined that document. And it was great because all of a sudden I had this thing that clarified, okay, what I needed to be spending time on. And any time that something came my way that I thought, oh, I like that, and then you kind of tempted to kind of jump in and firefight, I would kind of go to that list and think, is this aligned to any of these things? Okay, because while we are, it's really easy to get into that kind of firefighting thing. It's kind of very exciting. In the StaffPlus role, you have to make time for doing that maybe longer term, non-urgent work, but it's very, very important. So the hard thing from that conversation and that, pruning that list with my manager is that I learned that sometimes we just have to let go of some of the things we love. And for me, okay, I love solving incidents. I spent more than 10 years, okay, being on call, okay, with all the good and bad things that on call has, but I had learned so much, okay, and the thrill, okay, of understanding why something doesn't work, okay, it was hard to put down for me, but my manager said, this is an opportunity for you to develop another skill, which is delegating and mentoring and teaching. So there were lots of people in my team who were dying to kind of take that responsibility and be that person that could just kind of take an issue and just kind of dive through and bring others along and rally people. So that's what I did. I kind of took a step back from that. I stayed as an escalation point, okay, and then I kind of did sessions with various people, just kind of saying to them, when you don't know what's going on, this is how I go about it, and just kind of breaking down the steps of kind of getting uncomfortable with diving into something you have no idea about, and then coming out the other end with a hypothesis and testing that out. So I like it because when I read Tanya's book a few weeks ago, there's a whole section dedicated to finite time. Okay, so think for yourself that your time is finite. What does it mean for you to do this? Another thing is, well, there's deep work. Okay, coding is considered to be deep work. Okay, but there's a lot of meetings that happen, and there's a constant juggle between these two things. Okay, in the StaffPlus role. So engineers tend to say, I don't do meetings. Meetings are wasteful. And I will argue that meetings can be a team sport if they are facilitated and organized well. So there's a very popular blog article written by Paul Graham. A lot of people, I think, are already familiar with it. It's called Maker Schedule, Manager Schedule. And it talks about creative people being on this maker schedule and how you optimize your calendar every week, so that you're not interrupted. So you can just lose yourself in that time. And that can be the time that you spend kind of coding. And then there's a manager schedule, okay, that we all put down and say, oh, this is worth of nothing because all they do is meetings, all they do is fill out my calendars. And I was reading that from that perspective of being a staff engineer and how you kind of do a bit of both. And what I took from it was a quote at the end that I really, really liked. And it says, but now I've realized what's going on, and perhaps there's a third option, to write something explaining the two types of schedule. That's what the article is about. Maybe eventually, if the conflict between the manager schedule and the maker schedule starts to be more widely understood, it will become less of a problem. So I think the important thing is, let's discuss it, okay? And this, will create awareness, and it will make it easier to work with others. So the second part of this is strategies for knowing what to work on. Now it's like, how to create this thing that I need to kind of be working on? Because as you step into technical leadership, part of the job is figuring what you have to do. So the first thing is understanding that business context. And in Tanya's book, she refers to creating a series of maps. Okay, one of those maps is understanding what are those business goals and how, how is the work that you're doing aligning to that. So once you kind of understand that wide business context, part of your role is translating that. And I kind of make a similarity with that is you create a map, and then you give your teams a compass, and they know where their North Star is. And that is really empowering for them because then they can make decisions. They are the closest one to the code and the features that are being implemented. So having a compass enables them to just kind of really prod on, and they can become more efficient. And then the second part of kind of that map is about understanding where is your role in the organization. What are the things that you can influence? Because sometimes we want to just influence that thing over there, but if the thing that we work in or the department that we are influencing is not there, then maybe you either have to change your role or you have to just let it go. Okay, so it's really, really important to just kind of focus yourself on that. I won't go into any more detail on this because actually Sabrina has a talk on it, but Sabrina has a talk on this, okay, tomorrow, and it's about setting goals, so we'll skip on that. The third part of this talk is about how do you do your best work. This is something that is really, really personal to each one of you. I would ask the room, do people know what your personal strengths are? Have you ever kind of done an exercise of either feedback, workshop, personality tests that people dread and love at the same time? Those things are really, really important, okay, because the role is going to be tailored to your personal strengths. If you communicate to the people working with you, what are the areas that you are great at? Maybe you won't say you're great at. We're in the UK, okay? We are very self-deprecating, but you can say, hey, I'm very comfortable with this, or this comes out as easy for me, okay? Then people know what things they can reach out for you for help, okay? And it will also help you understand, well, if those things are easy, then it's very, you can develop them and become even better at, okay? Versus, I grew up in Spain, okay, a Mediterranean country, being a woman, and I was always being told that you have to kind of work on the constructive feedback. So I was spending incredible amount of energy trying to, achieve that perfection by working on those things that I wasn't great at. And then fast forward years, and I learned actually where you have more developmental room is in your personal strengths. So that helped me kind of become less self-conscious about masking those kind of bad behaviors. I know they're there, okay, I also communicate them with people, but focus on the things that I can, then develop for the future. So those things, communicating them, help other people kind of know what your boundaries are and how to kind of interdepend and collaborate with you. And I like it because it opens a conversation of kind of people's work preferences, okay, people's kind of needs, okay? We all have very different needs, okay? Sometimes the organizations that we work, they're very well built for people who are neurotypical, okay? And it becomes really hard for people, okay, that don't conform to that, to say, this is how I prefer to work, or these are my power hours, or I need things to be communicated this way. So by you doing that, you're kind of opening the floor for other people to also contribute and change that culture to be more inclusive. Now I'll go on, your personal strengths. We all like to be very optimistic, especially when we give estimates for things, right? But it's about being realistic about what you can achieve, okay? You've learned what works for you, okay? And you're setting goals that are not just a week or two, like Nayana mentioned. Some of the goals can be a year or a few years. So it's about being consistent, okay? You're preparing for a long-term delivery. If you are spreading yourself very thin, you're not going to be able to sustain that effort in the long term. So think for you, what are those power hours and those behaviors that day to day you need to be doing so that you can sustain that. And even though this talk is about managing your time, in the end it's really about managing your energy. Sometimes we can get lost in certain pieces of our work. For me, it used to be coding. Now there's other things that I can get lost in. But they don't basically deplete my energy. They can be very energizing. So some days I work a bit longer because I get lost, I get lost in those tasks. Other days when I have things that kind of maybe are a bit more draining for me and I don't have time to kind of recuperate from it or kind of get out for a walk, I find that I need to shorten them because it's not about the time, it's about how I'm feeling. So now we're going to get into a concrete, set of things. So we're going to be lining up our ducks, like you say in the UK. It's about becoming organized. And what does this look like? We kind of mentioned some principles, some frameworks, but we need to be concrete about these things. luckily, someone has been documenting already what some of these calendars might look like. So Will Larson wrote a whole blog interviewing different staff engineers working in different companies, and he kind of came up with a series of archetypes. So maybe your role doesn't conform to one of these exactly, but it's really useful to see an example of, hey, there's a tech lead who kind of spends some time doing deep work, but actually has a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of sync meetings, versus, hey, there's this person who's a solver, so they spend most of the time doing very deep work, okay, and they're not to be really disturbed. And when I saw that, I felt very seen, but I also felt really empowered, and I took out my calendar, and I thought, what does this look like for me? So imagine that, you could just delete the existing calendar you have right now, and just take a blank sheet of paper, and you have your priorities with you, and think, how do I break this down into a weekly cycle? Okay, because if you don't define your own priorities, I'm assure you that someone else will. So the first thing that I'd say, let's take care of ourselves and our needs. Add there your non-negotiables. For me, that is exercise. Okay, it's playtime. It's also walks with my dog. Okay, my dog it's lovely. It's time that I get in the park as well. Okay, it gives me a boost of energy, but it's also time that my brain can then kind of relax. Okay, I plan lunch as well. Most of the time, I try to sync with my partner if we're both working from home, and I count that as family time and time away from seeing the screen. So for me, those are the really non-negotiables. Then you add in time for planning and reflection. And I like that it was hinted at that you reflect at the end of each week, because it's something really valuable. And I go into that a bit more next. And then you use the existing blocks to put there specific tasks of things that you need to achieve that week, okay, depending on what the goals you have. And by blocking in those tasks and saying what they are, it signals to other people who are trying to get time with you, what are you involved with? But it also tells you, oh, I saved this time to do this, okay? And it also signals to your brain, I have this amount of time to do this. And it's a bit of a trick, because we can stretch tasks forever if we feel that we have infinite time. But when we know that we are constrained, we can actually get quite decent results with, let's say, 80% of the time. So going into weekly reflections, I'm highlighting this because it's really important to take time to pause, reflect, and adjust. And this is not only to kind of compare with that plan and those goals that we have, but it's also a key leadership behavior for you to develop, because looking back and taking stock of the things that you've achieved, it helps you then apply meaningful insights for the future. So if you do this on a regular basis, you can do it by yourself, or you can do it with others. Okay, I've sometimes kind of done it with an engineer in my team or someone external. You can also learn from each other, and you can coach each other to this. So I'm going to finish this section with a quote that I heard at Lead Dev London in 2017. I can't remember who it was, but it's something that really, really stuck with me. And it's influenced how I kind of view my career since then. And they said, you have to learn to lead yourself in order to lead others. Now we're going to just summarize the talk. So the first thing is work on the right things, okay? Align your priorities, and then empower your teams to come along and get focused. Secondly, break down your goals, plan, and reflect. And the last is tailoring your weekly plan to your unique strengths. Now I'm going to leave you with one question for you. How are you going to be more intentional with your planning? If you want, discuss it during the break with your peers. Thank you.